This week, we're in Ottawa, Canada. We're going to visit the National Gallery of Canada, Parliament Hill, and the Canadian War Museum. And then we're going to have poutine and beavertail. Let's see what this is.
Ask if we've been able to keep up with the kids. We've been calling them every other week, see how they're doing. They all seem healthy and happy, as you'll especially see in the next page with Drew. Hello again, everybody. Before we left Toronto, we had dinner with Julie's cousins, Amy and Tony. We had my favorite Asian food at Malibu's Taiwanese restaurant. We thank you, Amy and Tony, for a wonderful time and a great meal. We find ourselves in the capital of Canada, Ottawa. On arrival to Ottawa, we meet up with our friend Julia for dinner. Today we visit the capital city of Canada, Ottawa, Ontario. Ottawa's centerpiece is the Parliament Hill. The center block, that is pictured to the right, is the main building of the parliamentary complex. Right now, the center block is closed for a massive 10-plus year renovation. Additional floors, office space, informal lounge, indigenous culture space, and many, many things will be added. The estimated cost for this is $5 billion. There are links below in the description with more information on the center block renovation as well as the east and west block. The west block, pictured in the upper right, is the temporary home of the House of Commons and the Library of Parliament, and some of the preserved pre-Confederation spaces. The east block, pictured in the lower left, contains the offices of parliamentation and some of the pre-Confederation spaces. This is the pre-Confederation East Block Cabinet Room, otherwise known as Room 235. It was the focal point for federal power in Canada for over a century. This is where the Canadian Senate meets. This is the temporary House of Commons. All the seating used to be an old courtyard where they'd park the horses and wagons. You can see the exterior walls from the old building. They framed in the whole thing and put in seating so they could have their meetings here. Whenever the Canadian government holds a press conference, they do it in front of these two big doors in the House of Commons. You see some of the sights of downtown Ottawa. In the upper right is the American Embassy. Today we're at the National Gallery of Canada, located in downtown Ottawa. On the left you see a giant spider behind Julie. In the center photo is the Notre Dame Cathedral, and on the right is pictured the outside of the National Gallery of Canada. Decided to spring the extra $3 to go through a guided tour. It's a very limited tour, and then after that it would be self-guided. This painting is called the Copper Thunderbird. In the lower center of the painting you can see the shaman. Above his head is the Thunderbird. The images below in the blue background is the real world, the world we live in. The images in the pink are the world of the spirits. The shaman has summoned the Thunderbird to help protect everything in both worlds. Note the yellow eyes. These represent all seeing eyes, so they can see everything and everyone so they can protect them. Note the two hooded people. These represent people who died and passed on to the spirit world and also need their protection. The items in these pictures seem to be made of the same thing, but they're not. The one on the left is made of whalebone. The one on the far right is made of a combination of whalebone and black stones. All of the items in the center are made of walrus ivory. Between 1887 and 1888, the Rideau Chapel was built on Rideau Street in Ottawa, Canada. The chapel was demolished in 1972 to 73, but with the help of the Canadian government and the Heritage Foundation groups, they were able to relocate the interior of the chapel into the National Gallery of Canada. This exhibit is our favorite. the thing that stands out to us is there's a choir that is singing. However, each member has an individual mic and an individual speaker, and you can clearly hear it during the recording. This painting is from the master Flemish in 1640. It's called As the Old Sing, the Young Pipe. This painting is approximately 383 years old. There are 3 mistakes in this painting. Can you see what they are? One hint is look at the dog. The other hint is look at the kids. First off, if you notice, the dog's neck is too long. Second off, we can figure out why, because if you look underneath the ear that is facing you, there's another ear. Apparently the artist made a mistake and was correcting it. At the time this painting was released in 1640, you couldn't see those mistakes, but over 383 years, the paint has flaked over, and it's a natural thing that happens over time. And so you can see where they made the correction. The next thing, it's a child at the bottom. If you look at the flute, it's not in the child's hand, it's floating in the air. This painting is called The Voice of Fire. It made its debut in Montreal Art Expo in 1967. The National Gallery of Canada purchased it for $1.8 million. This was very controversial at the time for the taxpayers. Now they say it's approximately worth $14 million. This painting depicts the space race. The red line in the middle of it represents the fire from the rocket. These 2 paintings are by Monet. They were very rebellious paintings at the time because you were supposed to paint rich people and kings and monarchs, and Impressionist people did simple things that you'd see every day. For example, on the upper right hand, just 2 boys out by the river. But the bottom one is the most interesting. If you look at it at the very bottom, you see that black line going through it. But if you really look, you can see the arches of the bridge going across. This was a painting in England during a very foggy day. On the left, Georgia O'Keeffe was born November 15, 1887 in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. She was a modernist painter. She began her studies at the School of Art Institute in Chicago. O'Keeffe taught and continued her studies at Columbia University. To the right, Edward Wadsworth, a British artist. In the First World War, he was part of a team that designed the Dazzel ship camouflage for the Royal Navy. There's a short YouTube video linked into the description that explains Dazzel ships. Van Gogh was a Dutch post-impressionist painter. He was among the most famous and influential figures in Western art.
These three paintings were from the Uninvited project. Sarah Malloy, she assembled this remarkable list of artists, some now famous and otherwise largely known for their exhibition work. Next, we head to Canada's War Museum. This is the car Hitler used on his propaganda parades. You can see him in the pictures standing and waving. This is a Nazi tank that did not fare very well in battle. This is a Japanese balloon bomb. They were released over the ocean and would float on air currents until they would land on the west coast of Canada and the US. One of these bombs was found by a family. They were the only known American civilians killed on US soil. There is a link in the description below that explains balloon bombs. Eventually, you'll see the facade of a United Nations outpost. On the lower right-hand corner, you'll see an actual piece of the Berlin Wall. This display commemorates those people who lost their lives on 9/11 in the Twin Towers. In the center, you'll see an actual piece of the airplane that struck a building. In 2005, Afghan insurgents detonated an IED, which exploded and destroyed the front end of this truck. Everybody inside was okay. Strangely, the electrician who worked for the museum was riding in the truck when it went off. This is a display from the War Games exhibit. Raymond Moriyama designed Canada's War Museum. Moriyama and his family were forcibly moved to an internment camp in Canada. To help ease his fears, he built a tree house when he was in the camp. The sounds you hear next are the winds blowing through the trees in the house that gave him peace. In Canada, there are two foods you gotta try. Number one is poutine. Poutine is a dish of French fries, cheese curds, and is topped with a brown gravy. It emerged in Quebec in the late 1950s, though its exact origins are uncertain and several competing claims regarding its invention. For many years, it was used to mock the Quebec society. The poutine on the right was a traditional one that we got at a stand. The one on the left was a poutine that we got at a beer garden. It had a clear gravy and it was covered in brisket. The second food is Beavertails. Beavertails have been around since 1978. It's a one-of-a-kind Canadian pastry. Their slogan is, "Everything tastes better on a beaver tail." There are multiple types and flavors of beaver tail. There's a link in the description if you want to have more information.
Once again, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment. And now we're off to Montreal. Bye for now.